Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to the big show. Coming up next, we're going to talk about where the polls are at. What do the polls say? Which demographics are moving in the right direction? We'll talk about that coming up in the next segment. And if you have any comments, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Now, being in Texas, energy is always a big deal for us. And since we're 36 days away from the election, we have a big chance to affect how our energy industry is going to be affected for at least the next 4 years. Diana Fergot-Roth from the Heritage Foundation is on the James Show now. And an interesting article here focusing on the trade-off, for all the restrictions that we have here, that hurts us. For all the subsidies that we have and push toward renewables, a big chunk of that helps China. What are we doing here, Diana?
Well, I think that what we're doing is we're making the United States weaker and China stronger with these requirements that we buy Chinese goods. Here, the Biden administration has passed regulations under the EPA that say that 70% of new cars sold by 2032 have to be electric, 25% of trucks. So who makes all those electric batteries? China. Who makes most of the electric vehicles? China. Which company is the biggest exporter of vehicles, including EVs? BYD, a Chinese company who is partly owned by the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah. Now, is that on purpose or is that just a horrible coincidence?
So I have no idea if it's malice or if it's incompetence. I'm just an economist. All I can do is say what is going on, and I don't know about anyone's motivations. But it doesn't seem right because here in the United States, we have vast reserves of our oil and natural gas. We can make plenty of gasoline. We have auto workers in Detroit. We have auto workers in the South. We make plenty of good cars here. And Americans love those cars. They don't want to have to stop to recharge. I mean, some people like EVs, but that's only 7% of new cars sold right now. And mostly it's people who buy these as a second car. They can charge them overnight in their garage. There's no reason to force Americans to buy electric vehicles, which are mostly made in China. We have a huge country. We cannot put charging stations all over the country. And we need to be, grateful for the jobs that we have for our auto workers with these products that Americans want to buy. Not to mention all the mechanics who fix our cars. They're not going to be able to fix the EVs. Or the auto parts suppliers. They won't supply these parts to the EVs. So all this is a big giveaway to China, and I have no idea if it's malice or if it's incompetence. But it doesn't make sense.
So we have on the heritage.org website, your article goes into actual fixes. We're not just complaining about it. There's 15 policy recommendations. Can we sum those up?
Yeah, well, the policy recommendations are mostly as follows. Basically, what we want to do is we want to ban Chinese EVs. We want to get rid of the bans on internal combustion engine vehicles. We want to repeal the green subsidies that give us incentives to buy wind and solar and are driving these natural gas power plants out of business, reducing our baseload power. We want to have more permits for mining, for oil drilling, for fracking. And we want to engage with Africa because a lot of the critical minerals are coming from Africa, and China is engaging with these African countries, but not the United States. And one thing that's especially hypocritical is that here the Biden-Harris administration has mandated through EPA regulations that 70% of new cars sold be electric, but they have banned the mines that would give us the critical minerals to be able to make these batteries in the United States. So they are making us dependent on China, even though there are states such as Alaska, which produce a lot of rare earth and critical minerals, where the federal government has banned the mining of those because they don't like mining. They say it's environmentally degrading. Well, they don't mind it in Africa. They don't mind it in Latin America. They don't mind it in China, but they don't want us to do it here. Well, Mr. Biden, if you don't want us to do the mining for critical minerals here, why require the electric vehicles? Why require us to be dependent on China?
Yeah, I don't understand. Why don't they like the mining here? Most of it happens like out in the middle of nowhere, and I don't care if you scrape up a mountain to get minerals. It's better than getting them from China. It's like you're not even preventing it. You're just displacing it to a country that hates us. I mean, I'm starting to think these people aren't very good with economic policy, Diana.
No, I think there are ideologues. They somehow believe that electric vehicles reduce global emissions and make the climate better. But if it's just the West, if it's just Western Europe and the United States that are doing this, it's just a drop in a bucket because emissions are increasing in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, in all over the world. And the Biden administration says if the United States leads, these other countries will follow. But when John Kerry was visiting China, President Xi of China said they are going to peak emissions according to their own schedule, not according to Western schedules. Mm-hmm. All these carbon emissions in other countries are rising dramatically. I mean, in Indonesia, everyone wants air conditioning. I mean, here, everyone wants air conditioning. Of course, in other countries, they want air conditioning too. And that means more fossil fuels, not less. So it doesn't matter what we do. The prescription is involving trillions of dollars in costs for the United States and Western Europe. No gain for the environment.
Diana Fergot-Roth, thank you very much for being on The James Show. You can find more of her work at heritage.org. Thank you, Diana.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Yeah, these energy policy people, it's almost like, are they Chinese? Like, are you? Did you get voted in by the Chinese citizens or the American citizens? It really is that bad sometimes. All right, coming up next, we have some updated polls from over the weekend. I was pouring through the data this morning, and I got it sort of all organized for you. You're going to hear some new numbers and find out which demographics are moving toward Trump in about 5 minutes. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. It's time to check in with the most important commodity on planet Earth and also here in Texas. RT Trevino's back on with Pecos Energy. Welcome back to The James Show, RT.
Oh, thank you for having me, James.
Okay, so we've noticed that gas is solidly below $3 a gallon pretty much everywhere in North Texas. How long will this last?
I could definitely see this lasting longer than hopefully I could see it definitely lasting probably at least past the election for sure.
Okay. What's the explanation for this, RT?
Well, right now with the way the market is, we do have a large supply of gas due to the fact that the summer blend market was not there, so we have a good market. So we are now in the transition phase of changing over from the summer blend to the winter blend. And since that transition is already complete, we still have so much oil on the market. Even though we had a great summer as far as driving goes, we still didn't hit the estimated goals. So along with the fact that we continue to produce as much oil as we are, which makes gasoline, we should be good through the election.
Well, when these terms, summer blend, winter blend, it sounds like you're making a craft beer. Did we always do this, or is this relatively new?
That's a good question. And basically the main reason why we do this is just, because of the hot and cold temperatures out in the elements. So it at least allows the gasoline to flow more smoothly through the vehicle. Okay.
I was just thinking maybe because like California said you have to take so much sulfur out. And so we have to make a special blend just for those goobers. I was wondering if that was really a weather thing or a regulation thing.
No, that's a good question as well. And yes, everybody does have something. So some places have to have different styles of a blend. And so, yes, on that end, you are absolutely correct. But as a generalization, all of them do get certain additives or remove additives to just allow it to move slowly during the elements of that time of year.
So what is the oil patch, as the representative, our oil field workers here in Texas, what would y'all like to see at tomorrow's vice presidential debate?
That's a good question. Tomorrow, what I'd like to see is really a straight answer from this Harris campaign on basically hearing this guy say that he's against oil and gas. His running mate, President or Vice President Harris, has done nothing but flip-flop over the last several weeks, and I am not convinced, and I don't think half America is convinced that she is still pro-fracking, because I think she is really still anti-oil, anti-fracking. When you go look at her stance and her record and her values of her upbringing, they're socialistic along with communists, basically, and that they want to control everything, and they think by controlling the oil and gas, by shutting it down, is what to do.
Okay, so we have gas or the oil price of oil going down. Is there anything that OPEC could do to try and change that? Are they going to maybe restrict supply, or is there rumors of that? Or are we just going to go on our merry way having cheaper oil for a while?
Great question. Just here, was it, I think about a month ago, OPEC kind of tested the waters on just saying we're thinking about making a production change. That's all they said. It didn't say they were adding barrels to the market. It didn't say they were removing barrels from the market. They just said we're thinking about changing the production from the market. And we saw immediately that we actually saw a dip in the price once that happened. We're also continuing to send a bunch of oil to China and natural gas. I don't know if you saw, but we led in natural gas to China, but that's a whole other story. But right now, what OPEC, I think, is mainly concerned about is the sanctions against Russia. Russia sells oil for just easy example of about $60 a barrel, while the rest of the world sells it at $68. Well, guess what? That means Russia is actually selling more oil than OPEC, and OPEC does not like that. And my concern would be that OPEC would add oil to the market to get that price below 60 to actually then compete with Russian oil prices. But that's just something here, folks, that you're hearing me say.
All right, lots to think about there. RT Trevino, thank you very much for being on the James Show. Where do they find your work outside of WBAP?
Oh, yes, they can definitely check us out at PecosCountry.com or even thecrudetruth.com.
Thank you very much. There he is, RT Trevino, on from Pecos Energy again. Something that literally affects all of us, because even if you don't have a car, when you go get food, that was brought to you by a truck, probably. So, yeah, cheaper gas, good. Let's just keep this thing going, all right? Coming up next on the James Show, I had something else planned, but I give up. I relent. I'll play the Borders Are song again. And someone asked for me to play the Tampon Tim song. My friend's listening, hadn't heard it yet. And if you're thinking, well, why don't they just go look it up? I don't think that one's actually on the internet anywhere. The only place you can hear it is on the James Show. And it's not mine, so I'm not making a YouTube video and throwing it up there for you. It's just, you'll have to hear it on the James Show. Coming up in about 5 minutes. If you have any final comments, I'll talk to you in this last segment. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. And then the other story I want to get to is the University of North Texas in trouble for getting abandoned dead bodies. I didn't know this was a thing. Using them for science, which I don't know if this is really a scandal or not, but we'll cover all that coming up next. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Welcome to the big show. Well, just to keep track on your advent calendar there, that's a bad comparison, 36 days until the election, 71 days since Kamala Harris has been your nominee for the Democrat Party. No formal news conference, no real answering of questions, no accountability, no real understanding of the platform. And I'm just giddy about that because I almost want her to go through the rest of the election without doing a press conference, just so I can turn around and tell all the voters, you just voted on someone without having any idea who they are, where they stand, no accountability, no questions answered, nothing. Didn't go through a primary, didn't do the debates, didn't do anything. You people, if you still vote for someone who doesn't do that, you have to admit that you've been programmed. You have to admit you're a mindless automaton. You are the useful idiots that they talk about and Marxist propaganda. I mean, that's so bad. But the bigger issue that's on the table happening today, Israel went into Lebanon. And I don't mean they floated some rockets. I don't mean they did a drone strike. I don't mean they did a precision laser-guided missile strike. Boots on the ground in a neighboring country. That is a military invasion. That is an act of war. And not just like, well, this is a paperwork act of war. Like, well, if you put too many tariffs on my goods. No. This is a literal act of war, as in it doesn't get any more war than this. You have your army going across an international boundary and invading your neighboring country. For those of you who are like, oh, we're on the precipice of World War III. Dude, that's like saying we're almost in the pool. No, you already have both feet. You're going down the steps, and you're almost to the point to where it gets to, your man parts, and that's when you mean business. That's like how far deep we are into the water of war. We have the weapons and supplies that we're giving Ukraine so they can put boots on the ground in Russia. Same thing happening in Israel. Both of these wars are still escalating. How long have they been going on? Well, for the Israeli one, about a year. October 7th will be a year. It's easy to keep track of that. Because it started with that god-awful terrorist attack. And for Ukraine, what are we talking about? How long has this been going on? 2.5 years? And they're still escalating? Now, the question I ask is a little tongue-in-cheek. 800-288-9227 if you want to jump in. Because are you cool with Israel invading Lebanon is the first part. The second part is, if yes, is there any level of escalation that can make you lose support for Israel? Now, I enjoy having this conversation because I hope Israel doesn't have a two-state solution. I hope it's a one-state solution. I hope they get the whole West Bank and Gaza. In fact, I hope they get bigger chunks of land. In fact, the only piece of land that seems to be governed in some way that's not insane in the Middle East is Israel. So no, it doesn't bother me. But the sort of foreign policy libertarian streak that I have says, look, I don't support anybody escalating a war, period, point blank, end of story. But really, what are they supposed to do? Because you hear about this raid into Lebanon, but did you hear about the rockets that were fired yesterday from Lebanon into Israel? What about the day before? What about the day before that? What if it's been going on every day since October 7th? Israelis have been having to watch rockets fly over their head, pretending like everything's okay, pretending like they're just going to go to Best Buy and get a new mouse, pretending like they're just going to go pick up a pizza for dinner. I mean, it's been a constant worry. It's been a constant weight on the shoulders of every Israeli for a year now. This is after their cousin got murdered at the music festival. This is after their grandmother got her door kicked in and shot with an AK. This is how they've been having to live. No, it doesn't bother me a bit that they're invading Lebanon. What bothers me is that Lebanon's letting it happen. When I see the headline, Israel's invading Lebanon, and I go to the comments, there's going to be a lot of people saying anti-Israel stuff. Where's the anti-Lebanon stuff? Is there even a word for it? Anti-Lebanese? Something to that effect? Because if your country is letting Hezbollah or whoever's lobbing rockets into Israel, if your country's letting that happen, then you're already committing an act of war, or at least facilitating an act of war against Israel first. So no, I don't have any problem with Israel going to Lebanon in the face of a solid year of rockets being floated over their own citizens. Now, is there any level of escalation that can make you lose support for Israel? If I ask you that, okay, you're welcome to your own opinion. Let me tell you mine. By the way, 800-288-9227. I know some people out there have strong Israel opinions. I'd like to hear it. 800-288-9227. Ask me, is there any level of escalation that can make me lose support for Israel? Dude, it would have to be huge. I mean, it would have to be monumental. Because think about if Israel walks out across any border, is there a country that wouldn't be better off if it was more like Israel? If it allowed citizens to have, closer to their full complement of human rights, if they didn't throw gay people off buildings, if they didn't take international aid sent to them by the UN and use it to build rockets. So, yeah, would the bottom part of Lebanon that's been just the rocket floating, the rocket launch pad for the last year, would that be better if Israel controlled it? Probably. What about the Golan Heights going into Syria? Yep. Probably better off under Israeli control. In fact, I don't mind if they take a little buffer zone from all of their neighbors. How about Israel? If the international community, the rest of the world is going to be okay with rockets being floated into Israel every day, then Israel should be able to take up with their military as much of a buffer zone as it takes to put those rockets out of range. And I'd be okay with that. But I also try and think of this on the human level, because this one works both ways, whether I'm Palestinian or whether I'm Israeli. If the other side killed one of my relatives, I would just be on the death march until my life's over. And this has been happening for generations now. So the number of people, we feel like this is irrational. How could you support Hezbollah? How could you support the Palestinian Authority? How could you support the rocket floaters if you're from the West Bank or Gaza or Lebanon or something like that? Well, a lot of them have that close personal connection to where, their uncle might have been a rocket floater when they were a kid and he got taken out by the Israelis. Now, whether he was right or wrong, that would make you an anti-Israeli person. It would have a tendency, an effect. An anti-Israeli effect. And so we just have such an entrenched overlap network of grievances between this area that, it kind of explains why we have sort of the constant ongoing war. But I have a feeling if America took itself out of the situation and stop funding both sides of the war. Stop funding both the people in Gaza and getting them supplies and supplying the Israelis, getting the people in Lebanon, some refugee tents and supplying the Israelis and funding both sides of the war. They would actually have to have the final battle. If your supplies are cut off, I'm not saying it would be settled, but it might be. There would be a chance for settlement. There is no chance for a settlement under the conditions that the U.S. foreign policy is dictating right now. Maybe Donald Trump getting in there could do something better. But this garbage where we supply Israel with all the rockets and missile defense that they need, and even help them out with missile defense when Iran launches 200 projectiles their way, but at the same time is building a dock to get supplies into the Gaza Strip. It looks like we just want war, and we want war constantly and forever, as described in 1984. And that is wrong. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, we're going to get the opinion of the oil patch with all that's going on with the presidential election and talk of platforms and policy. How does the Texas energy sector feel about what's going on with Decision 2024? We'll talk about that next on The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.